Converted from salary to hourly, best decision ever. I worked for a mid-size fashion company with around 150 retail stores nationwide as a maintenance and safety coordinator. 4 months into the job my manager quit and I picked up everything and was doing fine on my own for years, and I was the only person in charge of maintaining the stores and the alarm systems in all the stores. I did get a pay bump but not a promotion in title. I put my contact number on every store's emergency contact list just in case the primary contacts, usually the store managers, don't pick up their phones in case of emergencies, and the store managers almost always refuse to pick up calls during off hours, so my phone would ring at least 2 to 3 times every night. 99% of the times are false alarm, usually caused by window brake sensors getting tripped by vibration from a big truck passing by or a leaf hitting the window. I hated it but had to do it because if no one on the emergency contact list picks up the phone, the alarm company automatically calls the police for dispatch, and there are penalties for false alarms, ranging from $50 to $200 per incidence after 2 or 3 freebies, varies by location. In 2017, Department of Labor passed a law requiring all employees making under a certain amount of money to be converted to hourly so they can earn overtime. My salary was $800 short of making the cut. I brought it up with HR stating that an hourly schedule would actually interfere with my duties and an $800 raise in pay would make everything easier, and HR simply said, "Well, that's too bad and we can't do anything about it at the moment." Well, okay. After that conversation I put my phone on mute and stopped caring about anything outside of my 9 to 5. In hindsight, life was actually so much easier and better that way, and not sure why I even wanted to stay on salary. Months go by without any serious issues, except for the penalties for false alarms starting to pile up. One day accounting and operations brought me into the office asking what those costs were. I told them what they were, and operations sent out a memo reminding all store managers that safety is of critical importance and they have to pick up calls from alarm companies. No one bothered asking why there was a surge of these additional costs, and I didn't care enough to remind them that it was because of me. Few more months go by and one morning I woke up to almost 20 missed calls on my cell. Apparently, one of our Florida stores was broken into the night before at around 3 a.m. The store manager tried to get a hold of me because I was the one in charge of requesting/dispatching vendors for things like emergency board up. After an hour of trying to get a hold of me, she eventually started calling up everybody on the hierarchy for help, and I had 6 missed calls from the senior VP of operations alone. Eventually the director of constructions was able to get a crew to board up the store, but that was almost 3 hours later and everyone was royally pissed. Unsurprisingly, the second I stepped into the office I was called into the office with all the senior management and HR and were asked why I was not there to take care of it, and I simply replied because I already clocked out. The senior VP of operations was obviously not pleased with that answer and said it was my duty and I needed to be on standby at all times to handle these situations even during off hours. To which I stated, "Oh, so I should be on call then. In that case I'll have to work with accounting to get properly compensated for my on-call hours once we have a schedule established." The room went silent. And nothing came out of the rather short meeting. Later that afternoon, HR called me into the office again asking whether I'd like to become salaried again with a pay bump. I said I'll take the pay bump but I'd rather stay hourly, and walked out. They didn't give me the pay bump. Edit. Sorry I didn't provide what happened next. So, here's some closure. I was put on call for a few weeks because it was summer at the time of the incident and HVAC systems kept failing over the weekends in our Florida stores. And again, I was the one to dispatch vendors to fix them. Money was great during that period, lol. Eventually the director of constructions was put on as the emergency contact for off-hour issues and he absolutely hated it. I left the company last year. They had to scramble to get a replacement and hired a maintenance supervisor with an MBA in political science, but no related experience. My last contact from the company was the supervisor asking me what the login credentials were for all the 150 stores' alarm systems. I didn't reply. Now to the comments. Nice. Employers routinely take advantage of people's goodwill. This is wage theft no matter how you slice it. But is also funny how they rather lose money on avoidable fines instead of paying someone a little bit more. In my experience, that's completely normal. My current workplace will pay an outside repairman to come in and literally do our job for $50 to $100 an hour instead of paying one of us the $20 overtime fee, on a system we all have years and years of experience on. They didn't want to give the meager $800 raise for all of the extra work that was already being done. That led to them finding out just how much was being done by this employee. Then, once they realized their mistake, they offered the small raise and returning to salary, which the employee deemed insufficient for the amount of on-call and overtime they would need to perform again. The company was being tight-assed and greedy. Too bad they won't learn anything positive from this. Only how to duck over their employees better in the future. Seriously, I do similar work, and wouldn't dream of handling 150 locations, their contacts, and service providers for $49,831.60 a year. They hosed themselves hard. If I was in his manager's position, I would have given the guy an extra $10K and double comp time for any call after 8 p.m., and knew I was still underpaying him. I would probably also have hired him an understudy, to learn the ropes and prevent siloing. That quote from We Were Soldiers. Your job is to learn the job above you, and teach your job to the one below you. Some tip: if they ever decide in the future to arrange for you to be compensated for on-call hours, which they probably will, a 5-minute call can turn into a minimum of 1 hour of work. So that's the best. OP replied. I actually left that company last August. Haha, they did put me on call for a few weeks because it was summer around that incident and HVAC systems started failing left and right over the weekends and I was the one to dispatch vendors to fix them. Ha ha ha. Money was definitely good for that period. Eventually they put the director of constructions as the contact for off-hour emergencies and he was very unhappy about it, lol. Here's a tip for you if you ever get into the situation where you are nationally in charge of alarm systems for responses. Have the monitoring company only send police/patrols to multi-hit and /or zone alarms. Unless you only have 3 detectors for the entire store, it cuts down on false dispatches. Sauce. AM Monitoring Center Coordinator, we will always work with you to make our jobs easier, smiley. I remember working as a general manager of a fast food chain restaurant. I won't name the restaurant but it rhymes with shitfondles. Anyhow, my district manager was on my ass about labor cost and I kept insisting that I needed that much labor in order to break the sales records that I was breaking. I had a regular clientele that reliably showed up every day for breakfast, seniors, and then construction workers were flooding in for the golden hour. I scheduled 28 employees every day to handle the lunch rush, and my deposits from lunch alone were up to $10,000 a shift. In my first year of doing this, our store went from $1.2 million in profit to over $3 million in profit. My manager didn't care. She wanted me to only have 12 people on to do the shift. I held out as long as I could because my crew was so happy to be making a good paycheck. Everyone was getting 38 hours a week. It was the best I could do for them. 40 hours a week was not going to be allowed, period. After many arguments, my manager started dictating how to run my store and scheduling was done by her and we dropped down to 12 people. That when shit hit the fan. Every lunch was a disaster. It took hours to clean up after the lobby had been destroyed and I finally started thinking maybe I should quit. One night I was still in the store doing paperwork at 9 o'clock at night. I realized that I was getting up at 4 a.m. to open, working breakfast and lunch, then cleaning with my crew and then helping them set up for dinner. On average I worked 4 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day and I was working that schedule 6 days a week. One day I did the math. I was earning a little over $7 an hour. I put in my notice and never looked back. I think my experience with the shitty arches really informed my opinion of the corporate world in general. District manager probably only got a bonus for keeping labor costs down and not for having a store triple its profits. She got $16,000 in bonus that the corp told her was at her discretion to distribute to the managers who did well in her district. Surprise. She kept it all. I got nothing.